Your freedom is being challenged. Your freedom to be a part of a process where people are wanting newsworthy events to be covered by those who actually have the truth behind the source, like the truth behind the source of information. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to assume that I have the freedom to put out on the internet the truth about what's going to happen to several souls in this world. When I do that, I can affect the reality of their world. If they need to come to me and tell me I need more information about this source, by all means, let's go there. The source of information for most of the internet is really not more than a few sources. There are a few sources that people start to look to as guidance. Some people are looking and saying, I just want the perspective of this very smart person to tell me what they think about what's going on. And that's called a perspective. I'm commenting on the news. I'm not just reporting the news. Okay? Now, that's where I really shine. Do you want me to take a time? There is a source that Brenda listens to, and he's doing a fabulous job. He's biased in that he does have his own viewpoint, but it's very well thought out and very well delivered. But what if I was to tell you that some of it is not exactly right based on what the founding fathers actually intended for the freedom of the press? Let's go to that. The freedom of the press is a foundation principle in this country of the United States of America. There are other countries that do have their own versions of it. However, what we're finding today is that the press is definitely not able to keep up with the movement of the political ideologies that are being put out there by several different people, by several different sources of information. People are starting to watch the channels of the world for the predictions. See, in the past, some of the more famous channels would say, I'm not supposed to be messing with the future because as a psychic, somehow I'm going to change it. What we've found out is the idea that I am in this present moment in various dimensions, getting the information for my soul, getting the information letting me know where we're headed, right? So how do we already know what's going to happen. We already know what Brenda should and shouldn't be putting out there to change the minds and souls' vision of where they need to, the projection of it. This is not about warning us about dire consequences, but what it does do is let people know she's on the right track. Freedom of the press means I can say whatever I want, right? You can't. There are guidelines. You can't slander people, right? You have no information to back up whatever it is that you're saying about, and your intention is to hurt them. How many people are held accountable to that on the internet? If it gets legs, people will start to come after those people who are putting forth information that is specific to certain, souls. But when I'm telling you that as a channel, I'm coming through with information that is so strong, you don't need to be worried about those souls coming after you, because by golly, it's their soul that's coming through that says, I need them to know that they're being held accountable for that vision that they're holding, which is destructive not only to this foundation of freedom of the press, but to this country, because that's the country I'm operating in. I'm not being held accountable for those souls in other countries because I'm not able to bring through the name. I can do it if I need to, but I'm not going to be doing that as much as the United States of America. Most of my viewership will probably be in the United States to start out with, and I want people to understand that. This is something that was held up as so absolutely wonderful. What happens when we have freedom of the press? It is a beautiful thing when it is honored for what it is supposed to be. But with the internet came this different kind of, well, we would call it a source. And now we don't have any ethics. There's no ethics within the internet. You can't charge people with slander, right? You can in this country, but outside sources can't. I can't slander somebody in some other country. They can't come and get me. But I'm not here to slander anybody. I'm here to bring through those sources of soul that want to talk about what it is to create a foundation in this country that's so strong, and yet so many people are taking advantage of it. And it's good in the broad sense that it created a system that said we can spread the word of much. It doesn't have to be politics. Press could just be regular news. But for the freedom of it, they knew it was about challenging our government and not having a government-run newspaper that just, puts out what it wants. That's the nature of a dictator that kind of runs that. There are other systems that do that. And what we want to say about that is that when you have the freedom, democracy prevails, right? That's a foundational principle of democracy that's getting blown up in this vision. If I'm able to bring through my source of information and someone's going to challenge me to where my source is, what am I going to say to them? I'm going to say, well, I channeled their soul. And people are going to say, what does that mean? I have to back it up. Well, I will. Because everyone that I know who's listened to my story as a soul knows that when I say something's going to happen, it's going to happen. There are moments that do come through for certain individual souls that may not happen if they choose not to listen to the information. And that's the nature of where I often go. Most people who I'm working with are not interested in actually doing anything to help with an outcome or to guide themselves. It's an outcome. What happens when I'm told something about someone else and it doesn't come true? That's their soul working with them, saying, I wish it did happen. It happened, but they weren't home and they wouldn't know any different anyways. So that was a message for Brenda about what happened. Her guides are never off when it comes to bringing her information based on the news about 4 or 5 sources that she has tapped into. And what does that mean to be in this country where you're it's one of your foundational principles is being challenged, because people will say, well, I want there to be more freedom in this country. And to be free means we don't have to worry about what we say. No one can even go after people anymore because there's so much stuff out there that's wrong. And I'm telling you, from a perspective of a soul, they're doing what they want. And so they're able to be supported by their soul. Their own higher self would say, well, they're making that choice to put out that information in that way, and it is going to come across in this way, and we know that is not exactly the best way for it to come out. Do you want to come out with information about Perry Mason? That's Perry Mason. So let's think about the lawyers of the world, right? How many people have their own she was talking about how she's got access to a high-level attorney. Not in real life, but in her soul. And who says, I'll let you know if you're going to cross any lines that's going to get you in trouble. That's the kick-ass soul that she's got. Now, someone would say, well, Perry Mason's an actor, is a character in a TV show. But that's the whole thing. That's how she knows she's working with someone else who says she's like Perry Mason. She seriously knows how to run down a source and kick it out. Like so fast. Like, oh my gosh, let me see. Let me hear something. Does it make sense? So most people would be like, who's Perry Mason? There are certain people that are going to know who Perry Mason is. And so they will know the kind of soul that she has access to. It's not the actor. She could have been a lawyer, or she could have been a really good lawyer too. But, it's just one of those things, she didn't go down that road. But she needs that. She needs that at some point. Because of the nature of her work, where she works with people and she has to make sure that people understand that I can't tell you that what I come through is going to be the most, groundbreaking information. It will for some people. When they experience it, things happen. When you experience a soul session, you get your own soul's information coming forth to you. So we want to plug that, and we're going to put a little link over there about how you can find out how to have a soul session. But because I'm involved in this country, and this country's embroiled in this challenge to our foundation, as a government that is supposed to be leading the way in transition to higher dimensional understanding of what that means. Transcending the system of government is what people are starting to hear. We're going to transcend the system of government, which means people are often very much it's like they're feeling betrayed by their government. So they lash out and they say, now I don't trust anybody in the government. Do you know why? Let's talk about that. We're not going to say that. How many people could raise their hands and say, I'm an honest person doing my best, working in the government, and I come across a news article in my desk, right? That's Brenda. I have a news article sitting in my desk, and I could comment on that news article about what really happened. She gets background information for all the stories that she reads about, and all the people, and what they were thinking, and what the outcome will be if it is yet to be decided. She knows who's coming through, who's gonna go down. We don't want to say it in that way because people will be, like, oh my gosh, we were gonna say in flames. There's no one going down in flames. So this is the nature. So some people will say she's accessing soul level information and using it to put forth to hurt people. And she's like, never. And that was her test. I am of the highest ethics. However, what I am here to do is to open your eyes to the nature of how hard it can be to bring through soul-worthy information for this kind of screen. For YouTube, if it's about a general nature, if it's political, it gets too hard, right? But who can I channel that might have an idea about the foundation of the, freedom of the press? That would be many different souls. We have lawyers and whatnot about that. And, there's enough people out there. There are enough people out there who have a very good foundation in what the founding fathers actually wanted. Had they seen where we went, they would have done something a little bit different. Because what's happened now is where Brenda goes. When we come through with a founding father, that's where she can go. When she's channeling, she can go through and pick up bits and information from those who were actually there at the time. And we're not going to talk about, I was a barmaid, or whatever. That's not what we're going for. We're talking about one of the actual founding fathers. How does their soul come through to a person who is claiming, I'm rising above the idea of channel and I'm guiding from within? I have access to my soul, who is of a soul, is of a soul, is of a soul. Okay? So this is the nature of where she is. So this is why she can get all the information. And if people want to know, how do I get access to my soul, which is more than who we think we are, you can, again, click over here and you'll get your own information for you. So let's talk about the foundation of this country from various levels of understanding. The principle of electricity was talked about by certain people. Brenda herself is a fan of, we're going to say it, she's a fan of the electric vehicles. And I mean a big fan. A big fan. Because she's like, this is so good. We've already told her that the batteries are going to become better and we're going to be able to figure out better ways of disposing those batteries. And now they're releasing a car coming out soon that she's just like, that one's for me. And that's Tesla. Now, how many people want to hear from Tesla? Or Einstein, because we know about his ideas about electricity. We could go down that road. But what you have to understand is that when I talk about freedom of the press, the founding fathers actually would want to come together in a group setting, inform people about their own ideas, and say, we had a difficult decision to make about who to go to. And I mean difficult, because there are other souls who are doing this work related to the principles of this country who actually read about it from our perspective. So most people will say, this is about, reading information and then just, putting it out on the screen. That's what most people do. They try to decipher from the notes and diaries of those who actually created those principles. What I'm here to do is to tell you what they think about it right now. So you see, as their soul rises above the nature of conditioning about, no, they don't. Okay, so I can access their soul from different dimensions. So if I wanted to access the soul of Jefferson, who is a very, very, very highly influential soul in that group, and very much in love with this person's idea about who he was, because he was like, I'm the bee's knees in many ways. But he had his limitations. He said, I was all for that. We were being dictated by the King of England. So we needed to be able to put out our information, and the king was restricting that access to, our citizens. We weren't citizens yet, but the citizens of, England, that's what we were. And we wanted to rise above that. Jefferson is no longer with us, right? His spirit is. his guide would say, his guide at the time. So he's saying, I was following the path of Jesus myself, and I know the difficulty in projecting out your thoughts when others are going to hold you accountable and say that you don't know what you're talking about. He was restricted in his vision for many ideas because he knew for a fact he was reading the minds of others. And he knew, that's what he thought it was. He's like, I'm just able to read minds, and he could tell I'm not going to be able to get through this idea that I was psychic. He didn't even know what that was. He was just like, I see things, I do things, and they come true. And I can interact with people, and there they go. I knew I was a slave owner, and I knew I was going to be in hell for it. That was my conflict. I had to come to peace with my heart about being a slave owner. While I was writing about those freedoms, I was being held accountable in my heart for my own hypocrisies, my own insecurities is really what it was. It was an insecurity in my heart about what those principles were for me. I didn't hold them true for everybody. So in my mind, I knew it. In my heart, I didn't. That's his idea. It's like I wasn't feeling it in my heart. In my mind, I was using my mind too much because now he knows the heart knows better. Okay? The heart is the heart. It's a field of vibration and he understands it. And that's a soul that's identifying as him as a male. So they would say as he is, we don't identify that now. He doesn't identify as a male now. He does in his evolution. Okay? He's doing it to evolve out of that conditioned mindset, because here's what happens. As long as I'm tapping into sources of information related to the souls of people here that have been on this plane, that's a different kind of soul. That's like a medium of some sort, right? We're out of that idea. It's still there for people that need to go to that. For Brenda, she's like, I'm going to bring forth the idea of higher level understanding. It's not Jefferson as he was. It's Jefferson's soul who's expanded his vision of what he could have even been. He's like, I could have been so much more. In his mind, he's thinking, I could have done so much better on my own. I had to go through the process of being held accountable for my own problems, my own ideas, my own caretaking. I was caretaking of everyone around me, and I didn't even know it. I was trying to play both sides. That's him. I wanted peace and harmony for our country. And yet I did some bad things too, that others, I was held accountable for my actions. And I said, by golly, I deserved it. Thank you for showing me the way of my world. I am saying impeachment was not pretty. I am saying I will watch over the current administration and make sure that they get their due. I am saying that with the field of vision that I have as a founding father, the man is beyond impeachment. In our day, that would be qualified as treason. He would have been probably shot by now. As a traitor of the foundation of this country. And if you are watching this, you would understand. Imagine your source telling you that in that day and age they would have shot. They had a process, but this was pre-revolution. The founding fathers weren't conditioned in the mindset of law as we know it. So for them, the idea of taking our founding principles, blowing them up, literally blowing them up to a space where someone says, this doesn't matter anymore because I'm going by a higher set of rules. I don't believe in the founding fathers anymore because they don't matter to me. This country doesn't know what it is to have that freedom. So we try to limit it by saying that news and that news is fake. It's not fake if it's actually based in truth of what it is that really happened. What is happening in most cases is that certain people are narrating their own versions of what happened. I'm not reading a piece of paper anymore that tells me this happened, this happened, this happened. I'm reading the information and then I'm saying, let me see how I can really make this shine. For my viewers who now think of me like a celebrity. The founding fathers had no idea that the press was going to hold as much sway as it does. But even they're like, oh, we're way past that. They knew the power of the press because that's how they spread the word about, the revolution, the revolutionary ideas. That's how it started. We're going to spread the word. The problem is that when we have so many sources of information, we now can't find any coherence within the thought. And so that's why it just feels like our consciousness is expanding. The press becomes more and more enlightened. They start to go, we can't do the same things anymore. People start dropping off. It's changing.